Is this the same transfer order that was Alicia emailed and not changed then?
Well, when I sent
You had one in the packet and then Alicia, I think, emailed
I
one.
emailed you with the other additions, the agenda, and then
Yep, this is it. Okay, thank you.
Guys, how are you? Glad you could join us. Hey, guys.
Hey, Michelle.
Sure. Friday yet? I have a physical therapy every Tuesday and Thursday.
Travis, Joe, how y'all doing?
They also do that in May.
I just was thinking with Jen Allgaier sending that.
Yeah, I liked your response to her. She didn't answer you, did she?
No, sir, she did not. I don't expect she will.
I don't think she will either.
But I just don't think people understand that 70% of our budget goes towards fire and EMS and incarceration. So, that's a huge.
And what does her money go for?
So far, nothing. At least she's not identified anything yet.
Salaries.
Yeah.
Salaries.
Yeah, salaries and, paying some institute out of Pennsylvania or somewhere to cause all a bunch of races. But we didn't get that.
That's true. I know, I wasn't on that either, but I used to love doing it, Greg, who's that handsome little man back there?
Somebody wanted to come to see the clock
Is
building.
that your grandson?
Yeah. That's Gregory Thomas,
How old is he?
6,
Oh, okay.
going on 16.
Got here, little squirrel here.
Hi there.
But he got a bag of goldfish in his hand, probably.
Hello, William.
What's going on, Greg?
Me.
Am I sitting till now?
I can. No, you know what, I just wondered. It makes no difference to me.
It's probably cooler down
I'll be the
there.
first person in the row right here.
So this we had talked about it, it makes no difference to me.
I should be a part of the crowd today.
Good evening, everybody.
It's telling everything. We're gonna sit here. We're all in trouble.
Take them out, they act that way. Very nice area.
So, you can get my glasses.
I can't see how these.
Back here, Jim. Wait, all right. You really do know your space yet? Sorry. I can see the wall, but can't see right. Sorry about that.
I'd like to ask you to join me in a historical prayer. These are from the words of Billy Graham at the 1969 inauguration. Our Father and our God, thou hast said, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. We recognize we are a nation under God. We thank you for this torch of faith handed to us by our forefathers. May we never let it be extinguished. You alone have given us our prosperity, our freedom, and our power. This faith in God is our heritage and our foundation. And now, with the wages of sin staring us in the face, we remember your words. If my people, who are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Amen. Now the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk to read the roll and call the meeting to order.
Commissioners Thompson,
Here.
Graham,
Present.
Elkins,
Present.
Davis,
Present.
Blanton,
Here.
and Constantopoulos is out.
It appears we have a quorum. Item number 5 is adoption of the agenda. We do have a consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there anyone who would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda?
Judge,
Yes.
I'd like to move 10, 15, 16, 17, and 23.
15, 16, 17.
That's on the amended agenda.
Okay. Any further requests? And we will remove from the consent agenda item number 10, 15, 16, 17, and 23 and place them on the regular agenda portion. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the agenda.
Who was the second? Because they both said the same.
I seconded.
Okay.
All those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item 6, public comments. Will Mayer of Van Meter Road.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having us tonight. We are here, and I'm here specifically to introduce Martha DeReamer of the Matrix Group, who will present the results of the survey that the Clark Coalition commissioned, specifically with regard to industrial solar and the opinion of that in this community. We are here tonight because we wanted the expert to be able to present the results to you all. Our intention had been originally to have her present at the Planning Commission. However, the Planning Commission Council would not guarantee that she would have the opportunity to do so, instead suggesting that we just simply email the results to him and the Planning Director, which we are not inclined to do. We feel it's very important that she be able to present the results of the survey, discuss the methodology, present her credentials, and importantly, answer any questions that you may have. So with that said, we'll turn it over to Mrs. DeReamer. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Martha DeReamer. I'm the president and CEO of the Matrix Group. We're in our 32nd year in Central Kentucky. We have, with over 3 decades of experience, we have a well-trained and skilled local staff. Basically, our purpose in life is we seek to provide clients with intelligent and perspective to influence their decision-making. And we have also a resolute commitment to excellence and making sure that we gather information that's accurate, usable, and relevant. We place scrupulous attention on the process of information gathering and then objectively analyze and summarize and report the results. Our experience ranges widely, both in the qualitative, where we do focus groups and in-person research, as well as quantitative studies, which I'm about to talk to you about, on a wide range of topics. We have a lot of experience on land use. We do a lot in agriculture and the equine industry. We also do a lot on community issues, public utilities, education, really kind of name it. We've done almost every topic. This is a particular area of interest for us. And in terms of the methodology, in identifying Clark County, the good news about doing a study here is you've got a manageable number. So our attempt was to reach every household in the community, and we mailed surveys to a total of 15,760 surveys. They were sent to both residential addresses as well as P.O. boxes, and we received back 1335. One of the things that we do now with our methodology to try to make it as easy as possible, because there's different strokes for different folks in terms of how they like to proceed with answering surveys. We both did it by mail, and that was the way they were invited to participate. But they also had an option to scan a QR code and do the survey online. So the way it came back to us in that 1335 completed was 200 were done online and 1,135 were mailed back. The initial mailing was made on March 13th, and we closed the survey on March 27th. And in terms of the tabulated results, with this sort of methodology, it's actually a non-probability sample. And it's a particular kind of sample called purposive sample. It's conducted with a specific purpose in mind. And in this case, the purpose was to reach every Clark County household possible and be able to get back a diversity of opinions about the subjects that we do. Under the sampling method, the goal again was to gain insights from that diverse group who were invited to participate. And again, we wanted everybody to feel welcome to participate in those two methods. And any implications drawn from the research are really based on that population, that group of people that chose to participate. And there is some limitations on the generalization for the entire population, because just like voting, some people show up to the polls and their votes count, and that's how we make our system work. So it works pretty much in that same way. So starting with importance, but one of the initial things that we like to do is try to understand where people feel are important, and we gave them some issues in the community and asked them to rate on a 4-to-1 scale in terms of how important those things are. And the results came back as 94% rating farmland preservation, green space, and scenic rural roads, and you do have a beautiful county here. 94% rating those in those top two box scores, with 80% saying it was very important and 14% somewhat important. And at the bottom of the scale, just 5% rated that not important, and 2% don't know. In terms of protecting and enhancing property values, that came in at 90% in that top two box, and you can kind of see how it fell down the line. Job creation, another important aspect, 91% rating that at the top. It was a little lower on the very important at 67%. And then encouraging development where infrastructure exists, that came in at 83%, indicating that that was the highest in importance on those two ratings. And then next, we delved into the solar energy issue. Again, this was a short survey, but this was the focus of it. So we wanted to understand how people felt about where solar belongs in Clark County. And residential use, designed to supply energy for on-site residential use, came in at 70%, felt that that was appropriate. Commercial use, designed to generate energy for on-site business use, came in at 52%, rating that as favorable. Industrial scale, lower, came in at 31%, and 26% said they didn't favor any of those solar energy systems. And then where it should be located, where do you favor locating solar energy systems in Winchester, Clark County? Rooftops, residential, commercial, or industrial, 64% felt that was appropriate. Abandoned industrial sites, 54% felt that was an appropriate location. 35% felt that agriculture areas with marginal soils was appropriate. However, 26% felt it didn't belong in Clark County at all. 15% felt it was appropriate in all zoning districts, and just 7% said it was appropriate in agriculture areas that had prime soils. And then we ask a question about decision-making. In regard to consideration of large utility-scale industrial solar development in Clark County, please indicate your level of agreement with the following statement. And the statement was, the process should involve a thorough and efficient review of research, associated costs, and benefits and environmental considerations with opportunities for community input. We found 71% strongly agreed with that statement. 12% somewhat agreed, just 2% somewhat disagreed, and 9% strongly disagreed with that statement. And that basically gives us an agreement, I think maybe the next, but that gave us a combined agreement, again, at that 4 plus 3, that's somewhat agree or strongly agree of 83%. And then the next one. And that was the question of, do you favor or oppose allowing industrial scale solar facilities in Clark County's agriculture zone? We found that 25% favor, that's a little hard to see, but the 25% were in favor, 61% were opposed, and I believe that's 14% didn't know whether it was appropriate or not. I believe that's the last one. So I'll welcome any questions that you have about the findings or the methodology.
Judge, before the court asks her questions, can I just ask for one clarification? Did you say it was a probability sampling?
It's a non-probability.
Oh, okay. That's the part I didn't hear correctly.
Right, non-probability sample, right. You know, what we're finding in this day and age, again, people have so many different ways that they want their communications, that we try to make it as welcoming and inviting in as many ways as possible to get them to participate. Can I answer any other questions?
The only question I have is if you could make a copy of your information available.
Absolutely, absolutely. I believe that Will has that, and we'll do that for you.
You didn't, that I don't have questions. I could see where I would likely have several questions, but I would need to study the
See it,
material, right, a little bit before I could
Absolutely.
ask an educated question.
Yeah, I understand.
Or as
And
educated as my question can be.
He can field any questions that you have to me at a later date, and we'll get you
Okay.
answered.
I do have one question,
Oh, sure.
if I may.
Go ahead.
So if my math is right, it looked like that of the total number of surveys you mailed out, that you had about maybe 8.5, maybe a little less
It's
than
close to 9.
8.5%
Yeah.
actually bothered to respond. Is that pretty typical, or
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, so most of the surveys that we do, they come in somewhere between 7 and 15% if it's a general population. So yeah, that is fairly normal. And actually, we work with a mail house, and they say almost everything that they do, if they're trying to get a response back, it runs around that same area, so.
So would it be fair to say that maybe the most people who are the most passionate about the issue, one way or the other, are going to be the ones that respond? Right?
Yeah, I think there are people, you know, again, I use that analogy with voting. If people, you know, not everybody shows up at the polls to vote, but in this case, I think that people that have an interest, and again, that's why you've got to make it as easy as possible for them to respond. But I do believe that if they see the topic and they have an interest in it, they're probably going to be more likely to participate. I think that's a good assumption.
One last question. I'm curious, is there any way when you receive those cards back, Mr. Reamer, that there was any way to track for you, that is, or for your company to track who sent that response back, like a barcode or an
Okay.
identifier that shows, well, went to John Doe's residence, somebody there responded and sent it back for you to say, that somebody at that address responded.
Right. Actually, so we did we put a number on every survey, but that was less so to try to track who did it, because one of the things that we want to let our respondents know is that their response comes back anonymous, and that we don't track who said what. That's important. However, the reason why we do track numbers and go back to the list, we assign random numbers, is so that there's not any fudging on that. Like 2 households, or 2 people, or 3 or 4 or 5 in a household, send one back. We did, quite honestly, get rid of a few that came back with codes that weren't verified, and we did not tabulate that information. So that was the reason for tracking with numbers that we could validate, but much less so in terms of where those addresses, who said what and who participated. That's an important factor in surveys, to allow them to be anonymous and not track their info. Does that make sense?
I think so. But it is possible to track that, right?
So when we purchased the list of residences, we asked for the addresses, and then I believe it was made out to resident at 521 Main Street, for example. It wasn't to Mr. Davis at
Understand.
Main Street, so.
Thank you.
Right.
Anything else? Thank you for dropping by.
Thanks so much.
Item number 8, a note in your minutes, condition report of the Clark County Detention Center dated 6/21/2021. I will note that I saw a couple of things in the condition report that maybe the jail committee should look at. I think we reserved some money in next year's budget to make some improvements, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think even the committee itself, and I don't remember if we disclosed it to the court, but we kind of earmarked certain monies in those funds for particular projects. And that doesn't say, not to say that they'll always be for those projects. I talked with the jailer and Ernie this week even, and with the cost of building materials coming back down, maybe we shift some of the work that we were going to do with fewer building materials into other projects that may require more building materials again. So, but yeah, we will keep an eye on those things as we determine what to spend it on.
Great.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. So now moving to the next numbered item, number 10, review and acceptance of the 2021-2022 Kentucky Pride Fund composting grant agreement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Just a question or two.
Alan, you may need to come up to the podium. It's regarding compost.
Thank you, Alan, for coming up.
Yes, sir.
There's no match required by the county,
Yes, there's 25% match, same as last year's grant.
so this 163,347 will match with 25%.
Correct, and employee cost is pretty much going to cover that.
And that will be in kind, well, not in kind, but
Yes,
nothing
it's a match.
additional above the employee.
Yeah, I wouldn't foresee anything. I mean, if we do, I mean, it really doesn't matter. We're going to meet our 25%, so.
So there'll be no other capital outlay, just hiring the person to.
Well, he's already hired. I mean,
Yeah, I know,
yeah.
but to do the job,
Yeah.
that's already in the budget.
Yeah, and we've actually got another grant on top of this that we got from the RED meeting for $10,000 through the Kentucky Department of Ag, and we have to match that. It's a 50-50 deal, so that $10,000 can also be used as a match for this. So,
Okay.
I mean, it's,
Now, this one is through Waste Management, right?
yes, correct.
It
is.
said Pride on the agenda, and
Yeah.
I assume that's the same, it's a
Well,
Pride.
Division of Waste Management is what they call this compost grants Pride, and then the Department of Ag is a completely different thing, and we got that through county funds, so.
And that's, well, since he's here, that was actually Eddie Gilkis' son, Brennan, who tipped us off as that fund being available, so.
Right.
Okay, that's all I needed on that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item, number 15, consider approval of the second reading of an ordinance to enact and adopt the Clark County Code of Ordinances. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Just a question, I guess, of you, Judge. Have all the department heads and the agencies spelled out in the code, have they all reviewed their portion of the code for accuracy to determine if there's any additional errors that haven't been found?
They have been notified at meetings that they can, but I've not received any feedback as to that.
So you haven't heard from anyone that there's any errors? Okay.
Any further discussion? I would like to make an amendment to subsection 9302 with section K under that. That is in our current code regarding Parks and Rec and the rules. Since we've recently amended this, I don't think it would hurt anything to amend this piece of codification as well, just to reflect that firearms are not prohibited to possess under KRS and under our code. So I would suggest we remove the word or possess, the words or possess, after archery and before or discharge in regards to firearms. We all accept that as a friendly amendment. Thank you.
I do.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 16, consider approval of the second reading of an ordinance relating to the Clark County budget for fiscal year 2022. Do I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just one point of clarification, I guess, on the budget itself. In our 95 accounts, we still have this adoption program, which is an unknown entity, and I can't vote for the budget as long as that's in there.
Fair enough. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
And that motion carries. Item number 17, consider approval of an order to surplus a 2012 Ford F-350 truck and purchase 3 2021 Dodge trucks for the Clark County Road Department. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Question of Alan, I guess. You've got two different type trucks. The 4500s, are those pickups or are they just work trucks with flatbeds or what are they?
Those are 1.5 tons that will be equipped with dump beds. That's
So you're going to change the beds on them and you'll have additional,
Yeah, they're just cabin chassis.
just
right
just
now.
cabin chassis,
Yes, sir.
okay. And then the other is just a pickup?
Yep, it's a 3/4 ton double cab,
Okay. And all these will be marked with the words Clark County Road Department, 3-inch letters?
whatever the manual says.
Is that yes or no will be fine?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 23, consider approval of an order appointing the Sanitation District Board of Directors. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just a personal observation. You've got some good individuals selected here, looks like. My only, and I won't say problem, the only comment I have is, you know, we have 30,000 people in Clark County, and I'm hesitant to appoint individuals to more than one board. I know Ron's a good member of the Industrial Authority, and I'm sure he said it was okay to serve on another board, but we've got people who are willing to serve and who want to serve, and I'm just real hesitant to appoint individuals to more than one of the county boards.
Fair enough. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion also carries. Now moving to the regular agenda. Item number 24, review and discussion of the Clark County Administrative Code. I have a few notes, but I'll let you all go ahead if you'd like.
The only comment I have, Judge, is with regards to the Grant County order that I presented last month for discussion. I can't remember, it might have been Magistrate Elkins, I can't remember, but there was discussion back in January, I think it was, about inclusion of the county attorney, the coroner, and the magistrates in those annual increases, and that was just a suggestion that I came up with. I didn't go through CAECO, but that may be a point where you want to discuss. At this point, I don't know. Just I threw that out there. I told you I'd see what I could find, and that's what I found.
I want Manager Blanton to know that I followed up on that. I converted that document to one that would be manageable here in this court, but I didn't receive any requests from anybody to present it. So it's been completed, but it's just laying on my desktop at this point.
Well, I think it was, and then we had this discussion earlier, so
And I'll be glad to pass it on to your.
it'll be fine.
Any other items that people would like to see potentially discussed in an amendment to the administrative code?
I'll let the others go. I've got another, but I'll let the others go first.
Okay. You have anything, Magistrate Davis?
Nothing at this time, Judge.
Magistrate Elkins?
Nothing at this time, Judge.
Graham, Thompson?
No, sir.
Magistrate Blanton?
The Assistant Treasurer and Finance Director, I think we had discussion about that job description being more hands-on with visiting, and part of the job description that was laid with that order did have some verbiage with it. I would like to see a little bit more language in there that indicates like an annual visit to ensure compliance. I think it said a visit or, let's see, it said a visit or to visit businesses or obtains addresses and information. I would like to see that position description a little more hands-on, visiting businesses, perhaps even annually, to ensure compliance with their occupational tax and payroll tax, to verify their records and employees, not just an office job, and I think we had that discussion of that. So I'd like to see that particular description at least reviewed and maybe amended some.
That's something that Alicia and I have discussed, in great detail. I think it would be fair to say, Alicia, correct me if I'm wrong, she's of the position as the direct supervisor to the Assistant Treasurer. She feels that this position should not spend an inordinate amount of time out in the public trying to recruit business.
Well, I didn't,
And she sees it more as an administrative role. We actually had some candidates who I would say, were more in line with your thought process, someone who was going to aggressively try to track down people who aren't paying taxes. And I think maybe the way that we can reconcile those two viewpoints is perhaps once we get the paperwork part of the job nailed down, maybe we could enter into a similar contingency fee as to what we've currently got with this outfit out of Alabama, I believe, with someone who's more local, perhaps even one of the candidates who introduced themselves in the process. So in some ways, I do agree with your thought process, Robert, but on the other hand, I don't want to step on Alicia's toes, and she feels pretty strongly about the issue, so I'm inclined to let her have that leeway. Anything else?
I've got one more tab on here. Let me see. We did finally get a position description for the solid waste labor. That's a little bit sketchy, but again, that's not a heavyweight position at any rate, but that was included. I was a bit surprised it just said ability to read and write as opposed to having maybe a high school or GED, so that's probably my only comment with regards to that. Reading and writing at this day and time is below minimal. I'd like to at least see maybe high school graduate or GED.
I'll review that with Mr. Curtis and see if he's got further thoughts on that.
One
Go
item,
ahead.
Judge, this has come up before, but the small purchase procedures were at section 8.6 for all small purchases exceeding $1,000. Judge shall obtain 2 or more quotes from prospective suppliers or vendors. I know sometimes that kind of becomes onerous, especially in urgent situations where we have to get something fixed, replaced, or repaired.
That is one of my notes. I think it would perhaps behoove the court to consider an amount to allow department heads to approve. Now, I don't know what amount the court would be comfortable with. Maybe 1,000 is a little bit too low.
What section are you in?
8.6.
I've heard a suggestion of up to 5,000. Maybe that's too high. If y'all would like to give me some input, I'll be happy to look at it.
I would think for some departments, 5,000 may be the right number, while others it may be a bit high, because, I mean, if you're dealing with heavy equipment, $5,000 is not a lot of money, but other departments maybe you make it a percentage of their budget or something, I don't know.
Okay.
Just a thought. One other question I had, Judge, and you probably have it in your notes, because I know you sat in on the various meetings that we talked about a job description for the assistant fire chief, if we should decide to have one, so.
Yeah, that would be something we would include if we decide to go in that direction, and we have that job description.
Let me
Okay.
ask you to keep this in mind. I'm not sure that, under the statute, that you could delegate your approval for any expense, no matter how small. So I think at most, you could give somebody the authority to place a hold on a line item by way of a purchase order, but after that, still has to be subject to your.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Maybe we didn't hit the verbiage right there, but yeah, we're talking about purchase orders.
The only other thing, Judge, I would mention, just consideration, and I don't know what, if anything, maybe ought to do or should do on it, is the issue of, to the extent we can under the statute, sort of merit-based or performance-based raises. I know I like the general scope and outline of our pay plan. I think it was needed, but I just wondered if it's something we ought to visit, or what your thoughts are about.
I was not on the court when the compensation plan was come up with. It strikes me as a document that is, in my opinion, outdated, because it simply relies on years of service, which, you know, if I were a department head, I think I would rather reward those who were high performers than necessarily those who'd simply been around longer. That's my opinion. I don't know if the court shares that opinion.
It was probably one of the major players in the pay plan, and I think most of us know that it was designed to bring some of the salaries back in line so that you had people with the same job description. Some folks were making $6 or $7 an hour more than others in the same job description with similar times on the job. But I'm not married to the idea of a compensation plan as it is, to be sure. So if there's appetite to change it, I'm okay with that as well.
Okay. Let's see here. I'll go ahead and look at my list.
I will say, while you're looking, though, it took a long time to put that together.
I know how you feel about it. I understand.
Years. But I'm not married to it.
Okay. See, I've had some questions specifically, and we talked about this when we did this administrative code, but I told people if they brought me questions, I'd bring it up. Is there any thought that there's inequity in allowing some departments to accrue sick time at a different rate than others? We do have different rates of accrual, I believe, for the fire department as compared to other departments. that was sort of a compromise that we made this time. Well, not quite this time, but last year.
Be something worth looking at. I mean, there are other ways where hazardous duty and non-hazardous are treated differently. Comp
They
time-
are covered differently under the statute. I mean,
Comp
that's-
time, one can accrue more than hazardous duty can accrue twice as much as non-hazardous duty on comp time, for example,
Mm-hmm.
on the statute. So what's 480 versus 240?
Yeah, the statutory limits are higher for
So,
those, in those
You know,
positions.
there is some precedence for treating them differently, but I think it's something we really have to be careful with.
I think the statute says you have to, doesn't it?
On comp time.
Yeah.
Yeah, comp time,
comp
you
time,
have to.
right.
Comp time, you have to treat them differently, yeah.
I'd be
Yeah, and
curious
I
if-
think that our administrative code in regards to sick leave, we did the best we could to mirror those discrepancies in the statute on comp time.
If we're going to consider that, I'd be curious to see or hear the reasoning behind.
Fair enough. Mark that one off. That's covered there. We covered that one as well. The use of timesheets by department heads. We have an issue that probably will be coming forward. It's already been an issue once with Alan in regards to when we had him spend so many hours helping with the cleanup down at the river. And it will become an issue with Steve, I believe, if we assign him duties as EMA and we pay him from the EMA line item. It's hard to track and sign in and sign out, it's my understanding, from two different positions in the time clock system. And there's also some somewhat onerous regulations as to how many hours you have to have written down at least a week in order to qualify for benefits. I think it's maybe 32. So the thought was, is it okay to have paper timesheets for department heads and clock in and out for other people, or do we want clock in and out for everyone and find a way to make it work with our vendor?
Do you have a preference?
No, not really, but I mean,
How about-
it doesn't bother me one way or the other. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to fudge their timesheet, so it doesn't bother me.
I wonder if you could, we could create a program where that we make every attempt to use the time clock, but when there'd be times naturally when it can't be used or doesn't make sense to use it, to do something different. Janet?
Can I add something?
Sure.
But the ideal, as we talked about time clocks, was to streamline payroll. Now, we haven't been able to do what we wanted to do because of the timing. But when you start using paper and your clock, you're defeating some of your purpose, although that you have a few department heads. The goal was, it would just streamline the payroll, and we don't have to go in there and manually put in anything. So having to clock in and out is much easier than doing a paper on the phone. Now, there was an issue because of the multiple departments, but we're addressing that as we move, we can say with this the same provider, or get a new one. That's gonna be part of the program. Because as you talked about Steve and you've got Alan, we're gonna have to do that. But to do the multiple systems with different people is very cumbersome for the person who's doing payroll. Speaking of which,
So
Yeah,
that's a
but-
consideration to be taken into account as well.
Leaves room for human error when, I mean, there's already enough room anyway.
it's better, it's a better system, and so you're gonna get very confusing when you start doing multiple systems to do this process.
Judge,
Yes.
the question isn't the time worked, it's the amount of time worked on each particular project. Is that correct? Because if you're salaried, it don't really matter how many hours you work, unless you're dividing your time up from EMA or fire chief.
Right,
So
exactly.
it's which time you spend on which project.
Exactly, and
And
I
how-
guess
where
the
you get
issue
paid
would
from.
be, you know, and I think regardless of what anyone says who's, I would make the argument that if you work 60 hours in a week, and it just so happens you work 30 in one and 30 in the other, you're still full-time.
Oh, yeah.
That's the argument I'd make, but there are, some people who would interpret you must work at least 32 hours to qualify for benefits, and so that could potentially cause us some issues with the insurance people and the retirement people. So that's kind of why we're trying to look ahead. Okay, what else do we have here? County road work. It says, and I don't know why it says this, and maybe someone could give me some guidance. Section 65C kind of would lead one to believe that the magistrates recommend county road work, and then the road work in general has to be approved by the fiscal court. Now, we do have a road plan that we approve, but I think having such a broad definition, road work in general, may be a little bit much. That may be something we need to rework unless somebody feels married to that particular phrase. I'll probably either omit it or find a way to reword it.
65C.
Yep.
I don't think that happens anyway, Judge, to tell you the truth, especially B.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just reworked the whole section. Most of it's probably isn't applicable right now anyway.
Okay. Well, that's one I'm going to take a look at as well. I have a thought. I just wanted to run this by you all in regards to Good Friday. We take a half a day for Good Friday. I can tell you that in my experience thus far, the courthouse is empty. Nobody's doing any work. They're basically just here for the sake of being here. If you all would authorize taking the other half of the day off, I would be willing to entertain that. But if you don't want to take a full day off for Good Friday, that's fine as well. But it is a religious holiday, and we don't take off any time for Easter, and I know there's some places that take a whole additional day off for Easter, so I just thought I'd mention that as a consideration.
I would know, Judge, I know clerk's office is always
Yeah.
busy, open and busy,
Getting ready to
so.
say.
What
The
do you-
problem that's gonna lie right there is if it's at the end of the month. And Joe can tell you, and Travis, my business owners and my farmers, if it's at the end of the month, and there has been some Good Fridays we have worked the whole day, and I've had to give my staff off a half a day at a different time.
Well, we certainly don't have to do it, but if that's something you all would like to consider, or we can just keep doing it the way we're doing it. It's just awful empty on that day thus far, but yeah, I'm sure she knows better than me on that.
I'll do whatever y'all want. I mean, we can take the whole day. My staff would probably love it.
I want to make sure I haven't missed anything. Oh, yes, actually, this is another issue. When we have, and this, Mary at the road department is a good example of this. And this will also probably become an issue with some of the people who work separate roles as associated with Steve as well. If we have a support position, as Mary is, who, in a roundabout way, they're now answering the phones for solid waste and compost and the road department. Now, I don't think it's reasonable for us to, have Mary write down county work every time she answers a phone and it happens to not be related to the road department. I mean, that'd be, wasting more time than it's worth. However, it does seem she's probably adopting some additional duties. Going back to the compensation plan, compensation plan says if we give one person a raise in any particular department, we have to give everybody a raise of either the same percentage or the same amount. I do think that there are going to be special cases, and I think hers is an example of that, where we need to make clear an exception to that. I do think that was probably written specifically for the fire department, Chief. So if you've got input you want to give me on that, feel free to do so. But that's another one I'm thinking about trying to tinker with. If anybody wants to talk with me about that, they can.
Input now, sir.
If you want to, sure.
I'll just say this, sir. I do not clock out and in for different parts of my position. I answer the phone on a regular basis, and it goes from emergency management to fire department, back and forth numerous times during the day. I may answer a phone call for FEMA that it could be skewed as fire chief related and emergency management related. So I would rather not see us try to narrow down me trying to determine how much time I spent doing this job. You've hired me to do both the jobs together, and I'm currently doing them, but the compensation is all the same right now. So I ask that the time be recorded as the same thing. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question, so to speak?
Does, I think.
In regards to you, it does. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily address the concern with
I think
support
there's
staff.
probably a
but-
mechanism or means we can put something in the compensation plan to address employees that work dual roles or something of that nature. So I'll give that some thought over the
Keep
next.
in mind, Mary's a very low worker. She is non-exempt, so she's getting paid by the hour. Whereas you've got Steve, who is technically exempt, getting paid for a role.
Yeah, one issue you're talking about tracking time, the other you're talking about pay increases.
So
Right.
you've got two different things you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more of a additional duties being added to a position.
Dual roles or multiple
Right.
roles.
Overtime, is that because that would imply that she's got more than she can handle in an 8 hour, in a regular working?
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with compensation. She's working 8 hours a day. But is that too much for her, for what she's got, not her qualifications, or is she is one of the best? Those are different.
Well, in her specific example, the problem lies, you're using road dollars to perform county work. That is not the maintenance, construction, and reconstruction of a road that's right of way. So if we're gonna ask her to use compost, solid waste, things of that, well, then you're back into, well, the road department could go paint the courthouse and use road dollars. So that's why I'm asking for clarification. We need to figure out a way to either pay her from the solid waste fund or whatever we have to do. You know, I understand it's hairy and gray and all that, but that's why y'all run for office, not it. We just need to figure it out.
I think I know what you're looking for. I just don't know how to get there yet. Let me give it a little thought.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to change her title. She's no longer administrative assistant. So either you change her classifications and then you pull those dollars based on percentage. But if she's hourly, she's either road department or she's got so many hours a day for this, so many hours a day for that. But she's a non-exempt employee based on an hourly wage.
To me, it really just goes back to the whole issue of the compensation plan being so locked in on everything. I'd almost rather just give the department heads a little more leeway. And I know that it's difficult with the way the laws are written. We technically can't give a bonus, but I think we can give a performance bonus, for lack of a better word. I just think we need to be a little bit more creative rather than just locking everyone in on the scale. Yes, Alan?
Judge, the last thing I would add to that is, that's where it ties in with Steve and I also. So if, you know, you split that, and you can't say she works 6 hours for the road and 2 hours for solid waste, because then she may not meet the 32-hour threshold. That's why the clocking in and clocking out is so problematic. And I understand it's probably problematic for the deputy judge that does the payroll, but I mean, this thing, you know, comes full circle. It's problematic for a bunch of us. So you can't expect her to say, well, hold on a second, I got to clock out of road time and then clock in to solid waste time. And it's the same with E&I, answering emails, phones, talking to people on the street, whatever that is. So you know,
I'd bet you good money that people in other counties don't get that detailed in when they're looking at it. So I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but
Just one more
we're
comment.
discussing it at least.
Can I have one more comment, please?
Sure.
Kind of related, but yet unrelated, people doing multiple jobs and tasks. Of course, Miss Wilson is the intern out at the CSEP building, and she was in at the budget session requesting more money, and I don't think her compensation's been increased since she just assumed those additional duties for those other positions, and it wasn't included in the budget as a raise, so I think we need to at least give her an answer from her request for that budget session about compensation and her additional duties. Would hate to lose her if she's not satisfied out there.
Well, we're currently looking at making some hires out there that would probably affect the budget in one way, shape, or form. Once that all shakes out, we'll address that issue. I think that covers about everything I had. If I missed anything and somebody wants to stand up and address it, that's fine, but I think that's everything I've got. Go ahead.
I think they had a deal on there for, order for disposal of stuff that we had if the test center is no longer useful to the county.
Yeah, I think that was in our consent.
Okay.
Yeah, we already did that with the consent agenda. No problem at all. Okay, well, we'll take all that into consideration. I think the administrative code has been thoroughly reviewed, and we'll try to make some changes in the near future for everyone to take a look at and vote on. If you have any further input, feel free to let me know. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, item number 25, magistrate comments. Magistrate Graham.
No comments.
Magistrate Thompson.
I'm good, Judge, thank you.
Magistrate Blanton.
I think all mine's been covered, Judge.
Magistrate Davis.
Nothing at this time, Judge, thank you.
Magistrate Elkins.
I always have comments, but I'm going to reserve them, hold them till the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, well, I do have a few things, unfortunately, I suppose. One thing that I overlooked, and William, you may need to help me with this, it came to my attention tonight in regards to the finance officer, that in order to qualify under, again, our pay scale is as exempt, the minimum amount that the federal wage and hour folks will allow is actually 35,000. Let's see, I wrote it down. I think it was $35,568. So I need to either amend our order from earlier, which was 35,000, or make a new order to change that number to $35,600.
What did it say previously?
35,000 even. That was my fault. They changed the number on the minimum and I wasn't aware of it.
And that passed on the consent agenda, or did they pull it out?
Consent agenda.
Yes, I think I would just revisit that now.
Okay. Can I have a motion to change the amount of the salary for the finance officer from $35,000 to $35,600?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Finance officer. Another thing I have, in 2019, you all may remember we were approached in regards to setting up a bicycle trail, and they asked for $750. We approved that through the court to do a joint project with Madison County. I've been asked to sign some permitting along with it that would just allow them to place signs. I think since we already approved the order for the $750, it's probably not necessary, but since we're being super detailed, can I get a motion to sign the documents associated with the bike program?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion also carries. The last thing that I would like to address, there's been a lot of discussion. I know it was brought up in the city commission in their last meeting, I believe, in regards to the Rescue Act dollars. And I think there've been some terms thrown around, one of them in regards to some of the systemic uses of funds in Clark County and Winchester. I would just like to echo what the mayor said. We have provided, over the past few years, extra money for our fire department. We've purchased a lot of new equipment. We're getting ready to dedicate perhaps over $1 million to Parks and Rec through a bond. We've made several purchases, and I think that all these things have been to the benefit of the county as a whole. I don't think anything represents an attempt by this fiscal court or any of its officers to participate in leaving any part of society out. When we make a purchase, we make it for everybody. If I tell Chief Asbury to make a run, he makes it without any thought of who he's making the run for. If Alan has to pick up a tree that's down in the road, he's not asking whose tree it is. He just goes and picks it up. So, I want to just commend our people for continuing to do their jobs the way they're supposed to do them. In regards to the Rescue Act money, I continue to review the documentation as to what we can or cannot spend it on. I know that there's a thought out in the community that we should perhaps set up focus groups to look at what to do with the money. And my thought on that, quite frankly, is that's what elections are for. A lot of us made it pretty clear what we wanted to do when we came into office. I don't think you need a focus group to understand that I don't want government to be bigger. I don't think you need a focus group to tell you that we want to do what we can to put money back in people's pockets, whether it be through economic development, tax cuts, things of that nature. So, the thought that we need a focus group to tell us what to do with the money that the federal government is providing, I think is, somewhat overstated. And in addition to that, I will just simply say part of me thinks that the federal government is dishing out a little bit too much money. What I'm going to try to do, and I'm just one vote of these 7, is I'm going to try to find a way to either increase the economy, to do a one-time cost project, or to give the money back to the taxpayers in some way, shape, or form. I'm not interested in using the $7 million to incur recurring costs and to make government bigger. That's my 2 cents on that issue.
Judge, I said I was going to hold my comments to the next meeting, but you went ahead and hit on that. So I want to say this, if you'll allow it.
Sure, go ahead.
I've seen the same letters and the same emails that you're speaking about.
It was an excellent response, by the way.
Thank you very much, Master Thompson. I looked at our budget, and of the general fund revenues that we collect through tax dollars from the taxpayers of Clark County, we spend in this year's budget, we budgeted to spend 54.2% on fire, emergency management, 911, and those type services, emergency services, which are for the vulnerable population, whatever that is, I don't really know. We spend 16% on incarcerating criminals for Clark County and holding them, which is necessary. The Commonwealth of Kentucky mandates that we do that. Those 2 expenses alone, for emergency services and incarceration services, over 70% of our budget goes to those 2 things alone. So, that every penny we put to parks and recs, we put to indigent services and burials and things like that, it's the best we can do with what we have to work with. I reject and resent the insinuation that we don't spend our money on the vulnerable population. I wish we had $30 million sitting in a fund somewhere that we could spend, but we don't have. I'll say nothing further. I just want the public to know that we spend money as best we can, and they watch us haggle and go back and forth with the city over, you know, a percent of emergency management services here or there. And that's the reason we do it, because, I mean, over 70% of our budget goes to those type services that we provide to the county. Or we don't provide them at all, that we oversee the funds for. So, nothing further. I had a
Okay.
lot more to say, but I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, that's all I have. I would request a motion to adjourn to closed session for personnel matters via KRS Chapter 61.810F.
So moved.
moved.
Motion and second. All those in favor respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Now in closed session, please exit the venue if you don't mind. Thanks for coming, everybody.